The U.S. places up to 8,500 troops on high alert in Eastern Europe as tensions roll over and NATO takes over one of our aircraft carriers to possibly observe a possible Russian excursion into Eastern Europe. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. In other news, Joe Biden on a hot mic calls Peter Doocy a stupid son of a bitch. And I don't like to do a lot of the whataboutism, but we do all know that if President Trump had done something like that on a hot mic, he'd be calling for impeachment number 6 right now. Neil Young has asked Spotify to remove all of his music over vaccine disinformation coming from Joe Rogan. And I hope that Neil Young will remember Southern Man doesn't need him around anyhow. And a January 6th probe Royals Cheney race in Wyoming, meaning that she's probably not going to get reelected. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. You know, I find it funny right now, and I don't begrudge anybody except for the fact that some of these people are actually coming out there and looking to have the war. They want to have the war because the war is good for their bottom lines, it's good for their polls, it's good for their, it's not good for their constituents, but I don't begrudge this war front anything to anybody at this point. But with that being said, one of the things that I pointed out, that I've seen this morning before I got started here while I was organizing articles, was people were saying that Joe Jorgensen would not be starting a war in Russia, which, I mean, is absolutely true. Throwaway candidates don't get to have military, or don't get to make military decisions. But on top of that, I mean, there's just so much else that goes along with that too. And Jorgensen, in and of herself, in and of her infinite wisdom, if by some major situation she got to be president because, you know, she was the only person left alive to vote for, because most of the other ancient candidates had a massive heart attack in the midst of this here. She'd be sitting here, she'd be weighing the same things as everything else. Ukraine sitting back here begging the US, do something, they're killing us. Meanwhile, if we go by the official Libertarian Party standpoint, at the southern border, wide open for militants out there who don't care for us to come back down there and join up with Mexico and come across the border to come back out and either subvert or outright attack this country off of this here. This is not a simple solution of just, hey, let's vote for libertarians and we'll all have peace forever here. That's part of the reason that we're in this situation right now, is because none of this is a simple situation. And I'm not even going to try to pretend to understand what the best solution for this would be. This seems to be something that's been roiling up for 10 to 20 years right now at this point. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what's happening on the ground right now over here on Contemporary. But before we get started, make sure you guys go check out turnsofpagesproductions.com. Turnsofpagesproductions.com will be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs, where we will carry great shows such as the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Breckenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the Freckles and Brit Show, and the Porch Boys. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for the donations of everything that you guys have done so far for turnsofpagesproductions.com. We will be getting set up and ready to go on a new fundraiser out here to get this up and flowing so we can get all these shows gathered up here. So it'll be a great time. Go bookmark the page, go check out all of the creators for Turns of Pages Productions, and go help us support great creators as well. Let's look in finance here. Let's actually get this up here where I can see you guys. How we doing, everybody? And let's get started. Starting in with the Dow. The Dow turned itself up at the end of the day. It didn't turn itself up very much, 0.29% or 99.13 points, up to 34,364.50. But that is coming down to the point. It's turned itself 1,000 points throughout the intraday yesterday. It dipped as low as 33,400 yesterday. So actually, it might have been lower than that. It looks like it might have been 33,200 at some point here. But it turned itself back around and it brought itself back up here at the bottom. So could this be a floor? Could we go even further than this down? We're not sure. Well, of course, we'll have to continue to observe and see where the markets go off of this. I do think that this is a little bit artificial, and I don't think it's going to last. But we will see what happens and where this goes, and congratulations on the Dow for finishing in the green for the first time in 2 weeks. We will see what's going on with that. Looking in at your Bitcoin, the Bitcoin is up to 36,543 US dollars and 20 US cents. That is up, or down rather. That's not up, that's down. It is up over yesterday though, so it's up almost 3,000 from yesterday, but it is down 158.30 or 0.43%, down throughout the last few hours, coming back up out of this. That's what we see coming out of the Bitcoin. On your scrap metal prices, your current metal prices right now, copper is on the downswing, steel is on the downswing, and aluminum is on the upswing on the average. Looking in at your copper plays, all of your copper plays and brass plays as well are all down. Stainless steel is up, but the same otherwise goes for all of the rest of your steel plays. All of those are in the red at this point. Aluminum is mixed with siding is up. Radiators are up. Sheet aluminum is up. Meanwhile, clean aluminum copper fin, aluminum cans, rims are all down. Electric motors are down. Ballasts are up. Lead is up. Batteries are up. Catalytic inverters remain mixed. Small foreign cat, large GM cat all up. Regular domestic and small GM down. Compressors are up, alternators are up, carbide is up, your computer plays, motherboards and PC tower are down, hard drives, power supplies, and low-grade boards are all down. So that's what we see coming up out of your scrap metal prices. That's what we see going off of that. Let's see what IBD has to say. From Investors Business Dailies, Dow Jones Futures sell-off has the stock market bottom. Fed meeting up next from Scott Latonin. Dow futures sold off 300 points early Tuesday. The stock market recovered from huge losses Monday ahead of the Federal Reserve's two-day policy meeting. IBM earnings kicked off 5 Dow Jones members reporting earnings ahead of Tuesday's open. Meanwhile, Microsoft earnings are due late on Tuesday. On Monday, the Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed 0.3%, reversing after declining as much as 3.25%. The S&P 500 rose 0.3% after plunging as much as 4%, with the tech-heavy NASDAQ Composite advancing 0.6% after erasing a 4.9% dive. Among the Dow Jones leaders, Apple lost 0.5% Monday, while Microsoft was up 0.1% in today's stock market. Electric vehicle leader Tesla traded down 1.5% on Monday. Lucid Group erased big losses, and China EV leaders Li Auto and XPeng Motors ended squarely lower. Among Monday's top stocks to watch, American International Group, Baker Hughes, CF Industries, and ConocoPhillips are near new buy zones. Keep in mind the current stock market status cautions investors to remain on the sidelines. Microsoft and Tesla are IBD leaderboard stocks. ConocoPhillips was featured in this week's Stocks Near Buy Zone column as energy prices rise and the mercury dips below zero for many of us up in the northern part of the country, especially in the Midwest. On the Fed policy meeting ahead of the stock market open Tuesday, Dow Jones futures fell 0.85% versus fair value, while S&P 500 futures moved down 1.5%. That's brutal. NASDAQ 100 futures were down 2.2% versus fair value. Among ETFs, the NASDAQ 100 tracker Invesco QQQ Trust rallied 0.5% on Monday, and the SPDR S&P 500 ETF moved down 1.2%. The Federal Reserve's weekly two-day policy meeting, and it's getting to be weekly at this point, by the way, will kick off Tuesday with a policy decision due out Wednesday. The Fed is expected to end asset purchases in March and then start to raise interest rates in a bid to fight inflation, which we've been hearing since this time last year about last March, by the way. The 10-year Treasury yield ticked down to 1.73% Monday, falling for a second straight session. So that's what we see out of the markets here. I don't think it's quite to the bottom yet, but it's getting close because we're getting to the points where people will come back and artificially hold it up just to make sure that nobody's losing everything, especially on a Democratic presidency. But we'll see what happens with that and see where it goes. Excuse me. A little bit of the lingering commie cough. I can feel it in my throat. I can feel it in my nose. From CNBC, S&P 500 futures slide by more than 1% as market's wild ride continues. This is from Pippa Stevens. U.S. stock futures fell Tuesday as market volatility continued after the major indices on Monday notched one of the biggest comebacks in history. Futures contracts tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost about 280 points, or 0.8%. S&P 500 futures dropped 1.6%, while NASDAQ 100 futures fell 2.2%. The Dow on Monday rallied from a more than 1,100-point loss to close up higher and snap a 6-day losing streak. The NASDAQ reversed a 4.9% decline from earlier in the day to finish positive, its biggest comeback since 2008. The S&P 500 also rebounded from major losses to close up. History shows a sharp intraday rebound for the NASDAQ composite does not typically signal the end of the sell-off, but rather marks volatility seen at the start of a down period, according to Bespoke Investment Group analysis. The yield on the benchmark 10-year Treasury note rose Tuesday, pressuring NASDAQ 100 futures and technology shares in the pre-market. Despite the Monday comeback, the S&P 500 is still down 7.5% in January, its worst month since March of 2020 at the onset of the pandemic. The 10-year Treasury yield has climbed this year as Federal Reserve tightens its monetary policy and prepares to hike interest rates. Investors have rotated out of the high-growth areas of the market in favor of safer bets. The NASDAQ composite is in correction territory, down 14% from its intraday record. Downside risks from monetary tightening are higher versus history. The pain has so far been localized to high valuation stocks, but signs of a broader risk off are brewing, Barclays' Manish Deshpande said in a note on Tuesday. Investors are eyeing the Fed's two-day policy meeting beginning on Tuesday for updates on when the central bank will raise interest rates and by how much. Market participants expect the Fed to signal a rate hike as soon as March, and more policy tightening on the table to address high inflation. So that's what we see coming off of that. That's what we see going with that. That we will see what happens with the market here. Like I said, it does look like statistically the NASDAQ could be coming up for another big sell-off here. But we will see what happens with that and where that goes. So we will go from that. And we are going to start talking about, of course, the Ukraine, the big news of the day for everybody here. But first we're going to start with this article here that I found. Ukraine invites Kyle Rittenhouse to guard their border. Yes, of course, this is from the Babylon Bee. From Kiev, as Russian troops increase the threat to Ukraine's sovereignty and independence, the Ukrainian military showed their tactical prowess by asking Kyle Rittenhouse to come guard their borders with Russia. Yo, Kyle, hope all is well. Hey, listen, our citizens are under threat from Putin and his D-bag army, texted Ukrainian Minister of Defense Sergei Ukrainovich to America's national hero Kyle Rittenhouse. Could you do us solid and come guard our border? Bring AR-15, LOL, THX. While some praised the move as militarily brilliant, as well as based, citing the fact that no military has the capacity to withstand the freedom spewing courage of Mr. Rittenhouse, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin criticized the move, citing Rittenhouse's status as a cis-white male. And reminding everyone that guarding Ukraine would require him to cross state lines. President Biden is weighing the deployment of troops to Ukraine, said Secretary Austin, but we're asking for more time while the president looks for a bathroom scale large enough to do so. Eyewitnesses inside the Kremlin say Putin responded to Ukraine's bold defensive move by tearing off his shirt, grabbing his Kalashnikov, and riding a bear towards the Ukrainian border. So that's what we see coming off of that. That's well, that's a little bit of fun. I thought that we'd have some fun with that too. There he stands on the top of the tank, ready to defend the Ukraine. But in some serious news here from this, on Ukraine, one question looms: what will we do if Russia attacks? This is an op-ed from Olesya Markovic. From CNN writing, those of us who live in Ukraine have anxiously read the headlines over the last few months proclaiming the threat of war looming over our country, with as many as 100,000 Russian troops amassed at the Ukrainian border. This is hardly a surprise. But the Ukraine has already been at war for nearly 8 years. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea, and Russian-backed separatists took control of the eastern Ukrainian city of Donetsk and Luhansk, in an ongoing conflict that has claimed some 13,000 lives, I should say, according to estimates by the UN in 2019. What we're facing now has already been at a simmer, but now dawning on all Ukrainians just how quickly this could boil over into war throughout the country. I clearly remember my last trip to Donetsk in May of 2014 as a staff member in the Organization of Security and Cooperation and European Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine. There were occasional shootouts in the city, and our security protocol forbade us from leaving the hotel. When it was time to leave, our brand new armored truck brought us to the once posh Donetsk airport, which had become an empty and gloomy place. There were only a few passengers among men in unidentified uniforms, and a tank nestled in a flower bed, pointing its muzzle at the departing planes. We got to the Ukrainian capital of Kiev safe and sound, but a few days later, Donetsk airport became the backdrop of a deadly battle between Russian-backed separatists and the Ukrainian army. Back in 2014, it was perfectly clear what was happening in the Donbas region along the Ukrainian border was staying there. The Ukrainian military localized the war, so most civilians, except those living near the battlefield, did not feel the effects. Odessa beaches, Kiev, restaurants, and Carpathian ski resorts functioned as usual, yet for many, including myself, it was obvious the Donbas situation was like a deep wound covered with just a band-aid. You might not see it, but if it's not properly addressed, it can cost you your life. I wonder how that goes for people living on the US border with Mexico right now. Now, in 2022, it's suddenly dawned on everyone in the Ukraine that war can break out beyond the Donbas region and disrupt everyday life in the rest of the country. According to the Russian playwright Anton Chekhov, if there's a rifle on the wall in the first chapter, it must go off in the second or third one, and here we deal with not just one rifle, but as many as 100,000 Russian troops in close proximity to Ukraine's eastern border. This military buildup was perceived as a mere chatter a couple months ago, has since become a resounding alarm bell for Ukrainian society. Ironically, the alarm was raised by foreign diplomats, politicians, and media, while the Ukrainian political establishment was slow to recognize the threat. Among my circle of journalists, civil activists, academics, and a couple of oppositional politicians was a desperate search for answers to a very crucial question: what should we do as citizens if Russia attacks? The recent answer that finally came from Ukrainian president didn't really help. On January 19th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, an actor who played as president on TV before he entered politics, issued a video address in which he asked Ukrainians not to panic. He gave detailed prognosis for 2022, celebrate Easter in April, roast barbecue on May Day, plan summer vacation, and so on. Yet a couple days later, in an interview with the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness, it seemed the desire for barbecue completely evaporated, as Zelensky acknowledged that Russian troops might occupy Kharkiv, a city in eastern Ukraine. Needless to say, this statement immediately caused panic among residents in Kharkiv, and the city's mayor had to issue a statement pledging to protect it from possible Russian invasion. But don't worry, it'll just be a minor incursion. Kharkiv is not the only target of potential attacks. Recent news about a joint Russian-Belarus military drills in Belarus raised anxiety in northern Ukraine, particularly Kiev and Chernihiv. To the south, the Black Sea coast of Ukraine can't sleep peacefully either, as these territories can become a potential target for attack from Russian-controlled breakaway Transnistria, if combined with offensive from Donbas in the southeast, Russian army can potentially occupy the coastline and landlock the Ukraine. And that is, by the way, one of the big aspects to this, and one of the big aspects as to why Russia is doing this in the first place. They want another warm water port into the Black Sea, because otherwise they have to launch everything that they have into the icy Arctic waters. With no adequate top-down communication, many citizens choose to follow common-sense survival rules, stocking up on food and setting up meeting points with their loved ones in case communication is down. Local authorities are auditing emergency capacities and test warning systems. Last month, Kiev city authorities and state emergency service checked on the conditions of the capital's places designated as bomb shelters and updated their map on Kiev's official city website. The key facility designed to be a mass shelter in case of airstrikes is the underground infrastructure in the Kiev subway, yet capacity is limiting to hosting about 200,000 people, which is not enough for Kiev's population of at least 3 million. Those who are not lucky enough to get in the subway would have to take shelter in places such as underground parking lots, the cellars of condos, and other public and commercial properties. Some cellars are designated as bomb shelters in 2014 and 2015, were later repurposed for civilian use to operate as bomb shelters in case of emergency. But a friend told me a cellar in her building that was supposed to be earlier designated as a shelter was rented out now and hosts a cafe, while others' designated shelter in my neighborhood was completely demolished during a construction project. People admit the uncertainty and the lack of clear emergency instructions are draining their intellectual and emotional resources, making it hard to focus on current tasks and their ability to make long-term plans, yet denial would be even more harmful. So, I mean, this is part of the reason that the Ukraine and the Ukrainian people are begging for the U.S. for help right now. And I do hear a lot of people saying this isn't our problem. This isn't our problem right now. But this is a problem that now the Ukrainians are begging for help, and the U.S., of course, has to have their fingers in everything that gets done over on the European continent, so that's something else to come back and watch as well. And there's always the looming aspect of the fact that a war in Europe right now would help the current administration and the current Democratic Party, because, hey, what's more popular than a wartime president? That's what we see off of that. Let's just have a look at some of the routes that they might be looking at here. Let's see what they've got going on here. And then we'll get into the rest of the news of the day.
To better understand the tensions between NATO and Russia over Ukraine, it's worth a glance at history and a good look at a map. In the Cold War, Europe was split more or less in two. The NATO countries in the west, Warsaw Pact under Moscow's dominance in the east. But post-Cold War, country after country wanted to join NATO, and it's moved up to Russia's borders. To understand why Russia feels nervous about that, a topographical map is useful. There's a mountain range running across Europe, the Carpathian Mountains. Now, from the Baltic Sea here to where the Carpathians start there, this is flat ground. And through that flat ground have come Napoleon and the French, Hitler and the Germans, and many others who've invaded Russia from that direction. And that makes Russia very nervous. Therefore, it seeks to either plug that gap by occupying it, or if not, where the ground opens up into flat ground, it wants to, at the very least, dominate it. In 2014, its reaction was to occupy and then annex Crimea, part of Ukraine, and its warm water port of Sebastopol, which gives the Russian fleet access out of the Black Sea into the Mediterranean, and from there onto the great ocean lanes of the world. It also fomented civil war in the Donbas region in order to create a small mini buffer zone. Now, Putin seems to be more ambitious. Now, if there's going to be an invasion, one of the four scenarios will probably come to pass. Fully occupy and annex the Donbas region. Up from that, move up from the Crimea and join all this territory up, so your buffer zone is bigger. One level up from that, race along the Black Sea coast all the way to Odessa, which is a Russian-speaking city. Annex the whole of the coastline and cut Ukraine off from the Black Sea. And most ambitious of all, you do all the preceding scenarios and You move troops into Belarus, which is friendly to Russia, and you come down from Belarus through what are called the Pripyat marshes, which are frozen in winter, and you encircle the capital of Ukraine called Kiev. The best time to do it is winter, because it's going to be a mechanized advance, and the mechanized divisions need hard frozen ground.
So, and I mean, with that, it's not just the farmland of the Donbass region either. Some of this is a major buffer zone because, yes, in the last two major conflicts, they are absolutely correct. Either the French or the Germans have come through and used the Ukrainian countryside as a staging point to go back and invade Russia. So that's a concern for them as well. But yes, of course, they're looking to have the warm water ports to launch their naval capacity and their military into the Black Sea from that direction as well. So that's what we see coming out of that. That's where we see coming out of that region, and that's where we go from there. Let's grab one from Insider for you. Trump says the Ukraine-Russia crisis would have never occurred under him, but he withheld military aid from Kiev, and experts say he emboldened Putin. Of course he emboldened Putin. He was Putin's puppet. From John Haltiwanger. By the way, Vigo the Carpathian traveled to New York City via painting. That's where Vigo traveled to. Former President Trump on Monday said the escalating Russia-Ukraine crisis never would have happened on my watch, okay? Ignoring the fact he was impeached over a scandal involving the withholding of military aid to Kiev. No, that's not true. He was impeached over a phone call asking to look into the monetary transfer between the current president's son and the energy company. That had nothing to do with withholding military aid. In fact, that was what Biden did, while pressuring it to investigate his political rivals, of which Biden was not at the time. What's happening with Russia and Ukraine would have never have happened under the Trump administration, not even a possibility. Trump was impeached in 2019 partly because he pushed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden. No, to investigate his son. Then one of his top political rivals. No, he hadn't announced yet. While freezing about $400 million in vital military aid to the former Soviet Republic. The Trump admin officially put a hold on the aid roughly 90 minutes after Trump's infamous July 25th phone call with Zelensky, in which he urged the Ukrainian leader to launch an inquiry into Biden and his son, Hunter, over the baseless allegations of corruption. Yeah, this is totally not an op-ed, by the way, either. The military aid was released to Ukraine months later after Trump was made aware a whistleblower complaint was filed in relation to the July 25th phone call. Since Russia invaded and annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014, Ukrainian forces have been engaged in a war against Kremlin-backed rebels in the eastern Donbass region. The U.S. has provided Ukraine with billions in military aid since that year, but Trump threw a wrench into that support in 2019. Throughout his presidency, Trump expressed admiration for autocratic leaders like Russian President Vladimir Putin, while criticizing U.S. allies and institutions like NATO. Experts say Trump's amicable disposition towards Putin and disdain for international and democratic norms emboldened the Russian president, as well as other strongmen leaders around the world. So, hey, we're about to go into World War III, and the first thing that Insider has to say is, it's all Trump's fault! So that's what they have to see off of that. From CNN, again, I had a lot of CNN stuff on this one here, but we got it broken up with some other stuff here. The U.S. has placed up to 8,500 troops on alert for possible deployment to Eastern Europe amid Russia tensions. From Barbara Starr and Jeremy Herb. As many as 8,500 troops have been put on heightened alert for a possible deployment to Eastern Europe as Russian troops amass on Ukraine's border, Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby said on Monday. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin issued the prepare to deploy orders at the direction of President Biden. No, he didn't. He issued the orders at the behest of whoever is pulling Biden's strings, but as far as Biden himself, Biden's orders are, hey, my adult diapers are full. Can somebody change me? The latest step in the U.S. has taken to prepare for potential Russian invasion of Ukraine that the officials have warned could be imminent. Kirby said the bulk of U.S. troops placed on heightened alert were intended to bolster NATO's quick response force, but they added it would be postured to be ready for any other contingencies as well. As of Monday afternoon, no final decision to deploy the troops had been made, Kirby emphasized. The U.S. has taken steps to heighten the readiness of its forces at home and abroad, so they are prepared to respond to a range of contingencies, including support for the NATO response if the force is activated, Kirby said. He noted that the NATO response force comprises around 40,000 multinational troops. Earlier on Monday, CNN reported the Biden admin was in the final stages of identifying specific military units it wants to send to Eastern Europe, according to multiple U.S. and defense officials. Biden discussed the options for bolstering U.S. troops levels in the Baltics and Eastern Europe, and I lost my place. With his top military officials during a briefing at Camp David on Saturday, according to a senior official. The goal of sending military reinforcements to Eastern Europe would be to provide deterrence and to reassure allies. There's been no suggestion U.S. combat troops would deploy to Ukraine or take part in any combat roles, Kirby noted. The U.S. does have military advisors in the Ukraine. Kirby would not say where the U.S. troops might deploy, but said the U.S. has made it clear to the Eastern flank allies that they're prepared to bolster the capabilities if they need it. Let's pull out the map, shall we? Maps right here. Let's pull out the old map and let's have a look as to where they will possibly go. I mean, if we continue to go down this path, we might actually I might start listening to V again a little bit more because, I mean, he's Romanian. He's right there. As far as deployment, because of NATO and where NATO goes with that here, I mean, there's already troop deployment to Lithuania, Latvia, because there are various alliances going on with that. There's going to be something obviously up in Finland to come back and watch and make sure that nothing comes through this region, even though that would be, for the most part, where we're sitting right now would be useless. But yes, we would probably put a small deployment along this region here, possibly not getting up into the Arctic Circle yet, but at least down into this swamped out region here of Finland, close to where the oil fields are. So there would be that. The majority of the deployment would go into Warsaw and the surrounding regions off of this here. As far as going into Ukraine, unless there's an actual invasion or a full-on alliance going back out here, deploying into Ukraine would be a risky move for the Biden administration. As of right now, of course, if this came to the point where we did need to come back in and start to defend the Ukraine, the deployment would go to Poltava and Kharkiv, of course, coming out of the Donbass region. And enough around here through, I can't even read that in Cyrillic right there, but enough to watch this border here, because this seems to be the strategic region that Putin is looking at there. So as far as what we would be doing for deployment, Romania, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary would be our main deployments right now, and then watching to see what happens into the Ukraine itself. In the event of NATO's activation of the NRF or deteriorating security environment, the U.S. would be in a position to rapidly deploy additional brigade combat teams logistics, medical aviation, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, transportation, and additional capabilities into Europe, Kirby said. So that's what we see coming out of that, and where that goes. Let's grab one from the Hill. U.S. sends aircraft carrier group to Mediterranean as Russian threat looms, from Ellen Mitchell. This is from a couple days ago. The U.S. military has sent the USS Harry S. Truman aircraft carrier strike group to take part in the NATO naval exercise in the Mediterranean amid tensions between the West and Russia, the Pentagon's top spokesperson announced on Friday. So, panning that out at this point here, just looking where we're at right now, this is going to be the general region that strike force is going to be in, bringing the Black Sea, of course, back through. They'd have to go through the Sea of Marmara and up through the canal into Istanbul, which used to be Constantinople, but now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. So there is that aspect to this. I don't know why the Black Sea is such a major target for Russia either. I've never understood that. Why they're looking to have that particular set of warm water ports. I mean, I understand the land aspect to it, but you've got a canal through Istanbul, through the Sea of Marmara, and through the backside of Turkey as well. So that just seems like counterproductive. Neptune Strike 22 exercises, which are set to begin Monday and run through February 4th, will demonstrate NATO's ability to integrate the high-end maritime strike capabilities of an aircraft carrier strike group to support the deterrence and defense of the Allies, Press Secretary John Kirby told reporters. He added that the strike group, along with other NATO allies he did not name, will participate in coordinated maritime maneuvers, anti-submarine warfare training, and long-range strike training. Kirby insisted the war games had been long planned since 2020 and were not in response to the recent Russian military buildup near the Ukrainian border, though the drills are not listed on NATO's website among exercises slated for later this year. Shortly after the DoD announcement, the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg added the speculation to the timing of the maneuver when he tweeted that NATO will always do what's necessary to protect and defend all allies. So, yeah, the military side of this here, the exercises, oh no, we've been planning this for years. Yeah, nobody knows about this either. So, try again, Jack Kirby. Try again. And get yourself set up for this, because I know our little friend Putin over there is going to look at this and say, hey, what the fuck? I don't like this. Let's do something else. From the Daily Wire, NATO takes control of U.S. aircraft carrier group for the first time since the Cold War amid Russia invasion threat, from Ryan Saavedra. NATO took control of a U.S. aircraft carrier this week as part of a pre-planned military exercise that could not have come at a better time, as it projects strength in the region as Russia appears ready to invade the Ukraine. Allied ships from the NATO Naval Strike Unit Support Forces Command and the U.S. 6th Fleet initiated a series of patrolling activities across the Mediterranean Sea within the framework of the Neptune Strike 2022, NATO said in a statement. Neptune Strike is a long-planned effort. It will be carried out until 4 February and features the deployment of the USS Harry S. Truman carrier aircraft carrier, along with its carrier strike group and air wing. Neptune Strike 2022 highlights NATO's ability to integrate the high-end maritime capabilities of a carrier strike group and ensure high operational readiness across the alliance and the defense and protect of all allies. The statement concluded it is the first time since the Cold War that a full U.S. carrier group comes under NATO command. The move comes as Vladimir Putin has amassed approximately 100,000 troops near the Ukrainian border and appears, according to the Biden admin, likely to invade the country. The capability of 6th Fleet and Strike for NATO combined staffs to enable a handover of the Harry S. Truman carrier group demonstrates the power and cohesiveness of our maritime forces and NATO alliance, said Vice Admiral Gene Black, commander of 6th Fleet and Strike Force NATO, said in a statement, NATO's command and control of CSG is the result of decades of alliance maritime interoperability. Neptune Challenge gave our staff an incredible opportunity to learn and grow together aboard our flagship Mount Whitney, said Rear Admiral James Morley, Deputy Commander, Strike for NATO. The lessons we took from Neptune Challenge led directly to our execution of Neptune Strike. I look forward to watching this combined team work to command and to control high-end forces in real time. The Pentagon said on Monday that Defense Secretary Austin had placed up to 8,500 troops in the U.S. on a heightened preparedness to deploy in case the U.S. needed to provide assistance to the region. Russia is demanding concessions from the West, including never allowing Ukraine to join NATO, which NATO has already said is a non-starter. In the meantime, negotiations continue. Other NATO countries have started to send forward send forces toward Eastern Europe, to send a message to Russia. So that's what we see going on in the maritime aspect of this, and basically building up a choke point for the Russian Navy to prevent them from coming back around to the rest of Europe. Because, I mean, you're sitting on, two major choke points here, both of which I think are allied with the U.S. Both this strait here, which I'm not sure if this is named, the Dardanelles Strait, the Sea of Marmara, and then the canal that goes down around Istanbul, which used to be Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. Apparently there's a winter storm going on through here as well. Well, better ask the Turks, I guess. But that's what we see coming out of that. And our friends over in West Taiwan have decided to make sure that we remember that they are there too. From CNN, dozens of Chinese warplanes fly near Taiwan after U.S.-Japan showed naval might. This is from Eric Chuang and Brad Lindon. China sent 39 warplanes into Taiwan's air defense identification zone on Sunday, Taiwan's defense ministry said, the largest such incursion this year. The flights by the People's Liberation Army aircraft came a day after the U.S. and Japanese navies put on a massive show of force in the Philippine Sea, putting together a flotilla that included 2 U.S. Navy aircraft carriers, 2 U.S. amphibious assault ships, and a Japanese helicopter destroyer, essentially a small aircraft carrier. Jesus, that's loud. Holy crap. So that's the military show that Japan and the U.S. put on for China over on that side of this here. So let's, as long as we've got the map here, let's actually pan out and have a look at what's going on over there, just so everybody knows what's going on now. This is the region that's in question here, the exiled area, where the legitimate Chinese government is. The Philippines also are in an alliance with the U.S., so they are affecting, and they're adding to the might of what's going on with the U.S. fleet after this. But yeah, I mean, China's right here, and they're buzzing over the side of Taiwan, and Japan, South Korea are helping out to make sure that, this all stays into place, which strategically, I guess I do have questions as to why Taiwan is such an important target for the Chinese government. I have a lot of questions about that, other than the fact that, they are saying that they are the legitimate government of China, but regardless off of that, we'll watch what happens with that. But, we're sitting here right now with this being off in question and a possible division of our U.S. forces here, while this is also being brought up into this. So, 5,000 miles between the two, approximately? And don't forget about these guys over here. Don't forget about these guys over here, because this might raise some other concerns as we go along with that. So that is what we see coming out of that region here. Let's finish reading here. 2 U.S. guided missile cruisers and 5 destroyers were also part of the exercise. The Philippine Sea is the area of the Pacific Ocean east of Taiwan between the self-ruled island and the U.S. territories of Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands. The Navy did not say how close the flotilla was to Taiwan. And that is just a bit of concern as we go along with that too, because as we are sitting here watching what's happening with that, we see, Taiwan, Philippines, and some of the contested waters over there. But we're not too far. I'm not sure where Guam is, but there's Hawaii, U.S. state, U.S. citizens right there. Not that China has much of a navy to get out in that far into the water to do something about it, but there's Hawaii right there, and I'm not sure where Guam is. Let's go and look at that quick. So perhaps maybe Hawaii is not necessarily in the crosshairs, but Guam definitely is. So that's what we have to say with that. All right. Let's shift gears here. Let's move off of what's happening in the rest of the world. Let's look at what's happening here at home. Starting with this one from Politico, Supreme Court denies Kevin McCarthy's challenge to proxy voting in the House. From Catherine Tully McManus. The Supreme Court will not take up Kevin McCarthy's lawsuit challenging proxy voting rules in the House, a final nail in the coffin to House Republican opposition to the chamber's absentee voting procedures prompted by the coronavirus pandemic. The lawsuit, filed by Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and fellow House Republicans in May of 2020, calls the House's pandemic proxy voting process unconstitutional and has been rejected twice before. The Supreme Court's decision to not take up the lawsuit, which the court issued without explanation Monday, means a July 2021 lower court ruling that quashed the challenge will stand. The 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia unanimously agreed that the courts did not have the jurisdiction under the Constitution to weigh in on the House's rules and procedures, which I don't agree with. I don't agree with the fact that they're doing the proxy voting, but I do agree with the fact that, yes, they don't have the jurisdiction for that. That is the correct decision in this situation. That decision upheld an earlier ruling by a federal district court. The lawsuit aimed to invalidate the proxy voting system put in place by the earlier weeks of the COVID pandemic and marked the first time in history members of Congress have been allowed to cast votes in the House without being physically present. Members of Congress should show up to work on behalf of their constituents, just as they have since our nation was founded, McCarthy spokesperson Mark Bednar said in a statement following the court's announcements. We can't rely on a separate branch of government to make Congress do their jobs as intended by the Constitution, and if Republicans earn back the majority, proxy voting will be eliminated on day one. That is your prerogative to do so if you are managed to win back the House, and that's what you should be focusing on right now, is whether or not you can win back the House at this point. That should be the focus on all of this, not trying to make the courts intervene off of something that they're barred from doing by separation of powers. So that's what we see coming out of the House right now. More at home here. Biden calls Fox News' Peter Doocy a stupid son of a bitch after questions about inflation. And don't worry, I believe we have the video of this. Let me double check that before we go, otherwise I might have to go back out and run out to the Daily Wire and have them come back up out of this. Yep, we got video. It has to do with Hannity, so I apologize in advance for that, but we do have the video. From Fox News, from Joseph A. Wolf's own. President Biden lashed out at Fox News White House correspondent Peter Doocy for attempting to press him on inflation. Biden met with a competition council and members of his cabinet on Monday to discuss a way of lowering prices for American families. Following his prepared remarks near the 8-minute mark of the live stream, members of the press began shouting questions, hoping for the president to take a few before they were shown the door by the White House staff. Biden knocked the first reporter who asked about the admin's call with European leaders as tensions between Russia and Ukraine rise. The only reason I don't like doing this is because you never report on why it's called a meeting. Because you never report on why I've called a meeting. And this is important, Biden said. I had a very, very, very good meeting. Totally unanimity with all the European leaders. We'll talk about later. Thank you. Will you take questions on inflation then, Doocy then asked? Do you think inflation will be a political liability ahead of the midterms? As Doocy and other reporters were being shooed away, Biden took a swipe at the Fox News correspondent. That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch, Biden said to his cabinet. Doocy laughed off Biden's comments later on the 5, saying, nobody has fact-checked him yet, and it's not true. Let's listen, shall we?
Stupid son of a bitch. Stupid son of a bitch. Stupid son of a...
We have some news tonight. After years of clips of the president and I kind of mixing it up on the campaign trail and during the transition and here at the White House, within about an hour of that exchange, he called my cell phone and he said, it's nothing personal, pal. And we went back and forth, and we were talking about just kind of moving forward. And I made sure to tell him that I'm always going to try to ask something different than what everybody else is asking. And he said, you've got to. And that's a quote from the president, so I'll keep doing it.
All right, I want to be your negotiator here. And I would like to negotiate a 20-minute sit-down with you and Biden, one-on-one. I think that would be, I'm a Christian, I believe in forgiveness. Okay, did he apologize?
He cleared the air, and I appreciated it. We had a nice call.
That's not an answer. Did he apologize? That doesn't sound like an apology.
He said it's nothing personal, pal.
Oh,
and I
pal.
told him that I
Okay,
appreciated
pal.
him reaching out. Hey, John. The world is on the brink of like World War III right now
I get
with
it.
all this stuff going on. I appreciate that the president took a couple minutes out this evening while he was still at the desk to give me a call and clear the air.
At least he called you pal.
But you know what? I don't need anybody to apologize to me. He can call me whatever he wants.
So that's what they say coming on. And of course Aaron Rupar has to be the one to come out and report it because, well, Fox News is evil. But do we? Yeah, we do have the video of what happened with that, I think. I didn't prepare this, so.
Why are you sending 8,500 trips to Ukraine, Will you take President Biden? Do you think inflation is a political liability?
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch. That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch. What a stupid son of a bitch. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch.
And we already saw with Ducey when he went back and forth with Sean Hannity off of this here, but Josh Hawley says very presidential, classless. Stephen Gutowski said, and I mean I look at this here, and I look at some of the things that have gone off of this, and like I said at the top of the show, I don't like to do the whataboutism side of this here, but I mean if this was on the other direction, if the shoe was on the other foot, as our friend Midget B likes to point out off of this here. If the shoe was on the other foot, we'd be looking at impeachment number 6 right now, because you know they would have already come up with 3 more reasons if Trump and Hong Kong got reelected. They'd already have 3 more impeachments up under their belt against him, hoping that somebody that they threw against the wall would stick. They wouldn't care that this was a hot mic. They wouldn't care about any of this off of this here. All they would, and I mean, that's part of all that they care about right now with this too, is the fact that, oh, it's Fox News, so they're just trying to do gotcha questions against the duly elected president Hong Kong of the United States. How can Fox News let their evil reporters do this? But that's what we see coming off of that. From the Daily Wire. Democrat senator says inflation's really hurting families in his state, but doesn't place the blame on Biden. From Ben Ziesloft. Senator Mark Kelly noted on Monday that inflation is really hurting Arizona families and families across the country, but pinned the blame on corporations rather than fiscal or monetary policymakers. As of December of 2021, consumer prices are rising at a 7% clip. Meanwhile, real average hour earnings, which consider the effect of inflation, decreased by 2.4% from December of 2020 to December of 2021. In comments to Yahoo Finance, Kelly observed that prices have gone up for gasoline, ground beef, milk, eggs, nearly everything. In response, he said that companies producing stable goods are engaging in profiteering. We want Arizona families and families across the country to be able to afford groceries, and this has been really challenging, Kelly said. I think this is going on in other industries where you have big corporations that are taking certain steps to increase their profits on the backs of the American people. Ranchers are getting the same amount for their beef than they did before the pandemic, but the prices have gone up. They're not getting more for their product, though consumers are now paying in Arizona about $5 a pound for ground beef. Kelly noted, so something is happening where the product goes from the ranch to the market. Yes, it's called transport. And it's something that you should understand, especially if you're going to be representing the interests of the people across a southwestern state, rather. And it's not just in Arizona, but I mean, I like the fact that Mark Kelly is placing the blame where it belongs rather than trying to come back out and, do stuff out here. Wait, let me rephrase that, because he's not putting it where it belongs, but he's not laying it solely at the feet of Biden. Biden is not at the root of the inflationary causes right now. For the most part, it's local governments and local officials who ran these inflationary practices and ran their economies into the ground to try to pump up the unemployment numbers, to try to pump up and say, hey, look at what our former president did to you, the people. And set themselves up into a situation that's spiraling out of their control at this point here. All the extra taxes and all the extra regulations in California, all the regulations on the DOT, the regulations on the local side of this, the U.S. Department of Agriculture regulations on the beef, like Kelly likes to talk about, on the milk, on the eggs, and everything else that they have to do to make sure that they can stand up and write the check to the USDA and make sure that they're in compliance, and all of their smaller competitors who could drive the prices down don't have a prayer in hell of raising themselves up to this. This is not a presidential thing, nor can the president really do anything about it except for come back and spout off and try to put the pressure on his local allies to try to alleviate something that's now spiraled out of their control. So that's what they see coming off of this. This has nothing to do with profiteering. This has more to do with more government than anything else. Good news for our friends in New York. From News 12 out of the Bronx, New York State Supreme Court judge strikes down governor's mask mandate. From News 12 staff. A New York State Supreme Court judge has struck down Kathy Hochul's mask mandate for schools and public locations. According to a court document, Judge Thomas Rademacher said that neither the governor nor the state health commissioner has the authority to enact the mandate without the state legislature, since the governor no longer has emergency powers. The document says, in part, there can be no question that every person in the state wishes, wants, or prays that this era of COVID ends soon, and they will surely do their part to see that is accomplished. However, enacting any laws to this end is entrusted solely to the state legislature. While the intentions of the Commissioner Bassett and Governor Hochul appear to be well aimed squarely at doing what they believe is right to protect the citizens of New York State, they must take their case to the state legislature. Yes. And I'm happy for this. I am so thrilled for all of this here. For every ounce of this, the fact that this continues happening over and over again. Because, for the most part, and then there were state laws that were enacted into this place in places like California. But there weren't state laws that were enacted in places like New York. Everything was done by executive order, executive fiat, and executive command, rather than getting the legislature involved. And in places like here in Wisconsin, the executive branch got their asses kicked for doing so. They got their collective asses handed to them and said, no, you can't do that. The legislature does that, you cannot. And now Hochul is getting some of this too. And good on the California legislature. I hate the fact that they're doing this, but they actually went through and did it the right way, so their Supreme Court can't come and slap their asses down. Now I hope that the people punish them come midterm time again, but yeah, it's time. It's time to come back out and try to get some of this done. Yes, Pritzker is next. Let Pritzker fucking get his asshole drilled by the Supreme Court. Because these are legislative items. If you want to go for a month or two to say, hey, we don't know what's going on here, let's just do this by executive, or the legislature comes together and do something, that's one thing. But we're going on 2 years with no legislation in most of these states. 2 years of everything being done by executive fiat. That's not how this country was intended to operate. We had representatives to make the laws, and we elected representatives to execute the laws on the executive fashion, not make the laws from the governor's desk. From the USA Today, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem announces proposals to ban most abortions in the state. From Nicole Key, Kristi Noem is taking another step towards fulfilling her September pledge to ensure South Dakota has the strongest pro-life laws on the books. The first-term governor's latest round of pro-life bills was announced Friday, the 49th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. The two bills would adopt similar legislation to Texas's Heartbeat Act, preventing abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected, and finalize Noem's September executive order blocking telemedicine abortions. Man, that seems like a difficult situation to do something by telemedicine. Every human life is unique and beautiful from the moment it's conceived. Every life is worthy of our protection, worthy of the right to live, to live, Noem said in a press release. We hope that this year's March for Life will be the last, and the Supreme Court will finally protect every unborn life. Now I actually have to go back and see if I can find what it was that I had to say with this. So let's see if we can go back through all of this and see if I can actually find the tweet that I promised yesterday. I don't know if I'm going to be able to or not. Ah, yes, this one here. Let's bring this over. Because there's another one off of here. Forrest Bennett says, this week I filed HB 3129, which codifies that the father's financial responsibility to his baby and their mom begins at conception. Now, of course, Forrest Bennett is not doing this for protecting the lives of children he's doing this for show to kind of say, hey, see, we're going to take away men's rights if men's want to take away women's rights. Well, and that's his exact point of this. If Oklahoma's going to restrict a woman's right to choose, we sure better make sure the man involved can't just walk away from his responsibility. To which I quote tweeted back out and said, your terms are acceptable. Absolutely. If you can't afford to take care of your child, don't stick that there. End of story. Don't put that there unless you're ready to take care of the woman who's going to carry your progeny, however retarded your progeny winds up being, and your progeny itself. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You know what they called that in the old world? Marriage. As of right now, there is no confirmation as to what these 6-week abortion bans are going to look like. The main rumor right now is the fact that these are going to be a copycat of the Texas 6-week abortion ban, which allows anybody to sue anybody for the fact that they did so. I still don't agree with that entirely. I believe that there should be aggrieved parties involved, directly aggrieved parties, not just anybody running out there looking to get $10,000 to sue somebody for doing this, but you know, that's between the legislature, the governor, and the people of the state of South Dakota and Texas. Not me. I don't live in either of those states. But that's what we see coming off of this. Neil Young got involved in the news. Starting with Rolling Stone. Neil Young demands Spotify remove his music over false information about vaccines. From Andy Green. Well, I hope Neil Young will remember, a Southern man doesn't need him around anyhow. Neil Young posted a since-deleted letter to his management team and record label demanding that they remove all of his music from Spotify. I'm doing this because Spotify is spreading fake information about vaccines, potentially causing death to those who believe the disinformation being spread by them, he wrote. Please act on this immediately and keep me informed of the time schedule. I want you to let Spotify know immediately today that I want all my music off their platform, he continued. They can have Joe Rogan or Young, not both. Young is referencing the steady stream of misinformation about vaccines that Rogan has peddled on the Joe Rogan Experience. Last month, 270 doctors, physicians, science educators, and nursing students, and activist college students, and people who don't actually have jobs, signed an open letter asking Spotify to stop spreading Rogan's baseless claims. With an estimated 11 million listeners per episode, JRE, which is hosted exclusively on Spotify, is the world's largest podcast and has a tremendous influence, the letter reads. Spotify has a responsibility to mitigate the spread of misinformation on its platform, though the company has no misinformation policy. Young removed most of his music from Spotify several years ago because he felt the sound quality on the service was too low, but he ultimately relented. That's where people get music, he told Rolling Stone in 2019. I want people to hear my music no matter what they have to do to get through to do it. I'm just trying to make it so they hear a lot more and enjoy it a lot more, but sell it for the same price because music is music. Okay, bye. Look, Neil Young has written some incredible songs throughout his career. I will not deny that. But it's just like, and we'll talk about Pepsi and Walmart and everything else off of this, but it's just like I said about Walmart yesterday. It's just like I said about Burger King yesterday. It's just like I said about Target yesterday. On all three of those yesterday, I said the same thing. When I start learning about what your politics are, but I would not make any sort of allegation that I stand anywhere close to the same politics as Neil Young. I think maybe Neil Young in the 70s and 80s, I possibly was a little bit closer to. I think Neil Young was probably a little bit more of the government leave us alone back in the 70s and 80s, and even back in the 60s. But I make no bones about the fact that I'm sure that Neil Young and I probably don't have the same politics. But the reality of me listening to the music is I didn't know. He didn't get out on the soapbox and tell me. And now he is getting out on the soapbox and telling me. It's the same thing with Walmart. I never bought ammo at Walmart, but when they got on the soapbox and said, we're not going to sell 5.56 because that's assault rifle ammo, I said, cool, you don't need to have my business anymore. I don't need to go to the Neil Young Spotify channel. I will still probably do CSN and sometimes Y. But I don't need to listen to the Neil Young Spotify channel. That's fine. Because I enjoy listening to JRE every once in a while if he's got a good and interesting guest on. Not all the time. I think he's pretentious most of the time. But sometimes if he's got a good guest on, I like listening to it. Market Watch is actually telling us the exact same thing Rolling Stone did, so we're going to skip that one here. From Newsweek, Boycott Pepsi calls grow over donation to Texas GOP after abortion ban. And again, my first question with this is going to be, did they make a major announcement for this, or did somebody go digging like they did with Chick-fil-A? Because that will make a difference as to how I feel about the company. From Ewan Palmer. A number of people have said they're planning on boycotting Pepsi after the company was named in a report listing the top corporate donors to politicians and political committees that played a central role in enforcing Texas' controversial abortion ban. So it sounds like somebody went digging for this one. Popular Information, a newsletter that details companies that donate to politicians backing certain causes, revealed that Pepsi had donated $15,000 to the Texas GOP after the bill, which banned the procedure in almost all circumstances after 6 weeks, was signed into law. The report states that Pepsi continued to donate to the Texas GOP after the so-called heartbeat bill was enacted, while continuing to promote its commitment to empowering women in the workplace, marketplace, and community. Once again, unless you want to have a child, don't stick that there. And if you do stick that there, don't let it go, while it's there. Unless you want to assume the risk of having a child. Despite not being the only company named in Popular Information's report, with AT&T revealed to have donated $80,000 to key proponents of the ban, such as the Texas Republican Caucus, who unanimously voted in favor of the bill, a Boycott Pepsi hashtag became the top trending Twitter topic in the U.S. E. Jean Carroll, which you know it's going to be good because it's E. Jean fucking Carroll, was one of the high-profile figures who set you a boycott Pepsi after they were found to have donated to Republicans who helped push through the abortion bill. I'm sorry, if E. Jean Carroll was out there right now saying that she was going to boycott my product after all the stupidity that she's done, I would have this to say to E. Jean Carroll right here. Need another reason to stop drinking Pepsi? PepsiCo sent a big fat check to GOP legislators who got the Texas abortion bill passed, Carroll tweeted. In a reply, fellow writer Tara Dublin wrote, Pepsi was always the inferior cola, but I gave up all soda 6 years ago. It's poison for your body, just like the GOP hashtag boycott Pepsi. Dude, soda is so bad for you. And I still enjoy it every once in a while, especially if it's something like this. But once again, and just like I said, when it comes to certain things, like, let's say Kohl's, for example, here in Wisconsin, a good Wisconsin-based company, Kohl's. I don't know if they have them in the rest of the country, by the way. It's like a Target or a Walmart or something like that. It's a department store. It is more clothing-focused. than regular department store, but it is a full department store in and of itself. Do you guys have those where you guys live? I don't know. They have them here. I've never shopped at a Kohl's anywhere else in Wisconsin. But with Kohl's, I don't know what Kohl's politics are. I have no idea, and I don't care to. I'm not going to go digging for that. I'm sure that they don't align with me on anything. But they're not public about it, so I feel more comfortable shopping with them. But then with Target, who got up on the soapbox during the St. George riots and said, hey, we're going to sell 60% of the products on our shelf from black-owned companies. I said, okay, well, you don't need my business then. Because you got on the soapbox and told me how you feel politically. And it's part of the reason I can justify going to Chick-fil-A as well, because it's another one of those situations where, yes, everybody knows that Chick-fil-A is super hard right, super white supremacist, hard right, white Christian nation. Yeah. But somebody had to go digging for it. Wendy's, that's another one. People got pissed off at Wendy's last year because they donated to the Trump campaign. But guess what? Somebody went digging for that. They didn't come out and get on the soapbox and said, here is our $10 million check for the Trump campaign, or whatever the fuck it was. They did it quietly. They wrote the check. They handed it off to somebody, and they went about their business. And then somebody went digging for it, just like they did with this one here for Pepsi. Pepsi didn't get out on the soapbox and say, we proudly donate this much money to Texas Republicans who signed this bill into law. No, they did it quietly. They wrote the check. The CEO said, I believe in this. And then some asshole went digging. But that's what they say off of that. From another boycott that's coming off of here, Mel C says, shame on Walmart Canada. This is discrimination based on nothing but government lies. Because Walmart of Ontario has said, starting January 24th, due to government mandate, we will ensure that all customers 13 and up are properly vaccinated when entering the store. So this is just for Ontario area Walmarts. This isn't a national thing. This isn't a worldwide thing. And Walmart Canada replies and says, hi, as directed by the government of Quebec, we will implement the vaccine passport. I'm sorry, it's Quebec, not Ontario. We will implement the vaccine passport at our stores in Quebec. We ask for our customers' patience and understanding as we continue to ensure a safe and efficient customer experience. There are so many reasons not to go to Walmart, and this is not one of them. This is not one of the reasons not to go there. You shouldn't go to Walmart for anything. They get on the soapbox. They tell you what their politics are. They tell you how horrible you are for buying 5.56 ammo or 223 ammo. They tell you outright how much they hate you. That's the reason you shouldn't go to Walmart. Not because they're complying with a local government order. Boycott the local government of Quebec. Don't boycott Walmart over that. Boycott Walmart over the myriad of other sins that they've committed across the world. Because there are a myriad of other sins that they've committed across the corporate world. This ain't it, fam. Alright, do we have time for one more? I don't think so. Do we have time for one more? No, we'll save these last four for tomorrow. And I won't get up late tomorrow. I promise. Cross my heart. Let's do Twitter trending and let's head out of here for the day. Let's go find the Explore page over here. Or come back and look at all my notifications. Alright, on the Explore page, on trending, let's see what's trending for Tuesday. For your Tuesday on Twitter today. Number one trending, we covered this already early on the stack. Neil Young is trending. They can have Joe Rogan or Young, Neil Young wrote in a letter to his manager and label, not both. Young demands Spotify remove his music over false information about vaccines. I say that for the majority of us here, we should, at this point, all respect Neil Young's wishes, and if we don't believe exactly the same thing that Neil Young believes about the vaccines, we shouldn't consume his product. Unless we believe exactly the same way that he does. Temper Tantrum Joe is the number 2 trending today. Lauren Boebert, top of the list, says, you know you failed when you campaign on being the adult, but just a year and some days in your presidency. Temper Tantrum Joe is top trending. Stolen elections have consequences. Hashtag Temper Tantrum Joe. This is what happens when you order a president through the mail, says Angela. Temper Tantrum Joe. There's a good one right there. Hashtag Temper Tantrum Joe. Smartest man I know, Hunter Biden, on a crack bench with cigarettes sticking out of his mouth. Stupid son of a bitch, Peter Doocy. Stephanie Hoover says, I take great pleasure knowing that Peter Doocy can very easily, it seems, get under Biden's skin. Keep up the good work, Peter. Comfortably Smug says, Biden apologized to Doocy, but still didn't answer Peter's questions about why Biden is destroying the economy. And the last one we'll look at on this one. Now we'll do 2. Stick says, yes, Temper Tantrum Joe is a good mimetic strike. Clank approved. And Claudia Tenney asked the important question, if Joe Biden can't handle Peter Doocy, how is he supposed to handle Vladimir Putin? That is a good question. Number 3 trending today in the US is Boycott Walmart, which we just talked about here. Like I said, if you don't want to shop at Walmart, there is a mass litany of reasons not to shop at Walmart. This is not one of the reasons. They are following a government edict to try to keep their doors open. Their government edict sucks. Boycott the government. Boycott the government of Quebec. And find another reason to boycott Walmart, because there are 1,000 of them. It's very easy to find a reason not to shop at Walmart. They fucking blow. Walmart Canada, boycott Walmart is now trending nationally in Canada. I will not step a foot in Walmart Canada if they do this. Boycott Walmart. Melissa says, starting tomorrow, people like me will face even more discrimination as we'll be banned from even more places. Take a listen and share. Let's have a listen. Let's do what she asked and take a listen.
There's just no health-related logic in any of these mandates that continuously discriminate and segregate against people like myself. Starting tomorrow, January 24th, there's a whole new list of places that people like me won't be able to enter. I'm going to show you some of them. There's just no health-related.
So yeah, I mean it's a bunch of stuff too, like Costco, like the tire place in Quebec. So there we go. There's your boycott Walmart. We will skip Tuesday motivations. We will go to Bonds, talking about the Hall of Fame. If Barry Bonds isn't a Hall of Famer by the end of the day, it's a failure by the Hall of Fame. Wasn't he juicing though? I was too young to really know what was going on with baseball, and I didn't really start getting into baseball until I was 23. So I might not know this story entirely. They're talking about Bond with Idris Elba, which I don't think that would actually be the worst idea in the world. But they are talking about Bond too, but they're also talking about Barry Bonds in this one here. So, yeah, I don't know if Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame or not. I don't know enough about the situation to say yes or no. Because I was 14 when all this happened. All right, and the last one we'll do is Wordle 220, which we talked about Wordle last week too. And apparently Arvold figured out what Wordle was. I still have no idea. Sarah Bessie tweets out, the social contract we're all upholding is to not spoil the day's Wordle. Has slightly restored my faith in humanity. This is Wordle 220, 4 of 6. That's so sweet of Wordle today. I have no idea what a Wordle even is. A lovely way to celebrate my 30th day of my streak. Wordle 220, 1 of 6. Wordle 220, can anyone explain these numbers? I haven't missed a day since I started playing. What the fuck is Wordle? I have no idea. There's 5 of 6 on Wordle 220. I don't know. I know that Gillibrand used the Wordle plot to try to end the filibuster. That's all that I know about Wordle right now. And it seems to be something that trends every Tuesday now. So we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. I have no idea. People doing the Wordle at midnight, people who do the Wordle before work. What is a Wordle? Somebody explain this to me. What is a Wordle? I don't know. But that's what we have. That's what we have for that. We're going to head out of here for the day. So let's switch this up here. So we've learned that I still have no idea what a Wordle is today. We've learned that Walmart won't let people into their Canadian stores unless they have the Vax passport. We've learned that I'm going to go get a Pepsi after the show here today before I go to my other job. And I'm actually possibly going to go get some Taco Bell too, because we were talking about Taco Bell breakfast on the show last night here, and now I kind of want some. So I might be going and doing that for breakfast here today as well. So we're going to head out of here for the day. Where's the music? Where's the outro music? All right, and with that, that's it. We've got a show for the day here. We'll see what happens in the Ukraine over the next 24 hours. We will see what happens with Walmart. We'll see what happens with Neil Young. I do hope Neil Young remembers that this other man doesn't need him around anyhow. And we will see what happens with the inflation as well. Come back and join us tomorrow at the regular time. I won't oversleep tomorrow, I promise. So come back and join us at the regular time tomorrow morning for more Contemporary. We'll take care of these last 4 articles we missed throughout the day today. We'll see what happens in the next 24 hours with the news cycle and everything else that goes along with that. And we hope to see you here. And do remember that I do read all of your commentary throughout the day too. So those of you who are putting commentary in, even though I'm not reacting directly to you on the day, I do pay attention. I read everything here. So thank you guys for keeping me up on the straight and narrow and everything else that we have to go. We will see you here tomorrow for more Contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.